Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Charmed Life podcast. I am your host, Tricia Carr. This podcast is all about magic, metaphysics, mysticism, the unconditional love of the universe, aka the universal law of one. I am a spiritual teacher, and I'm also a hypnotherapist and a multidimensional channel and medium and animal telepath. You know, I do a lot of things. And this episode, I have a conversation with my friend, comedian Dan Donohue. Now, you may be thinking like, oh, wait, why would you have a comedian on a spiritual podcast? Well, that's because, baseline, everything that is creative is spiritual because intuition and creativity are really the exact same process, maybe a slightly different portal, but I don't know. I think it's all the same thing. So he's a very creative person, being a comedian, but also we met in a meditation business. I was actually a teacher and he was working at the front desk. We talk about that a little bit, but I wanted to have this conversation with Dan because he's doing so much amazing work in helping those who are in need. So I'll let you listen to it. In addition to that, I'm going to have Dan back on because, wow, he has so much wisdom, and his experience in spirituality is really profound. And so I just love talking to him. Now, with that, I want to say also that I made a little bit of an error with this episode. So you're watching this on YouTube, and I thank you for that. I forgot to hit record on the video. So I decided to go ahead and put this up on the YouTube channel anyway, and I'm just putting a couple of stationary images on the part where I don't have the video. But I'm going to play for you first the little piece that I actually did hit record for. So that's also been on the channel in a separate offering. So with that, let's get into the video and then the podcast with Dan Donohue, and I'll see you on the other side. I'm here with Dan Donohue. We just recorded like a buttload, an hour packed full of amazing content, but I forgot to start the video. So it's on the podcast. Go check it out. It's awesome. It's amazing. But we wanted to say hello on YouTube as well. So welcome to my YouTube channel, Dan.
Hello.
And tell us a little about your little old self.
You know what? I mean, first of all, let me just say it's too bad that we lost all that content. I was doing a lot of physical bits. I was juggling. I did handstands. So just remember theater of the mind to include that.
Yes.
I am
You were levitating there for a bit, and that was, you know what I mean, like amazing.
Yeah, we'll catch that on camera next time, but it does only happen every lunar cycle, so we'll have to wait for that.
Actually, my particular favorite was the shape-shifting. When you became the gray alien, that was really cool.
Yeah, the gray alien is actually that's one of my earlier works. I usually I like doing bifurcated ox, and I also like doing amphibian creature. Those are my two favorites.
So Dan is a comic, and he is also a real spiritual dude and stuff. He does a lot of service work. On the podcast, we talk about his work with the unhoused, with the homeless population, particularly here in Los Angeles, because that's where we are. We're actually in my studio doing a socially distanced episode. He's in the booth, and I'm over here in my room. And so we had a lot of good talk about meditation, about doing the service work. And again, Dan is also a comic, as you may have been able to tell so far.
Or maybe not. And listen, either way is fine. I guess what we go over mostly is the connection between service work and spirituality, and how those two things can really feed off of each other and make the other stronger.
Mm-hmm. Kind of get into what to do when there's burnout. And I think that extends to what to do when there's burnout, even if you're just like looking at what's going on in the world, when looking at social political issues, or, if you're a person who is looking at, hey, aren't we supposed to be ascending as a planet, and why aren't we at 5D yet? All of that kind of stuff. That's burnout, I think, right?
Big time, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you're not burnt out right now, there is something seriously wrong with the way that your brain works. And,
Maybe they just meditated though. That was what you said was that's what you have said is the clue to the
no,
burnout.
even during meditation, you should be completely exhausted. You should be cursing the name of God. I really do think that that's the real way to enlightenment, is embrace true, just devastating hopelessness.
You're not trying hard enough.
You're
Yeah.
not trying. You're not thinking hard
You're
enough.
not spiritual enough.
Should be throwing
We're
rocks
clearly
at
kidding,
stuff.
but yes.
Yeah. And if you don't want to watch the episode at this point, just know Tricia sets a car on fire in the middle of it. I cried. And yeah, we just went over some real top classified government secrets in this podcast. So go ahead and listen to it.
Yeah. We'll have you on again and we'll turn the video on next time.
Hell yes. I can't wait to move up to that level.
We're doing a socially distanced episode. Dan is actually in another room of this studio. This place actually has a lot of different rooms. He's in our booth, and we're seeing one another's face for the first time today because we were wearing masks, and really excited though to connect.
It feels good. I'm miles underground right now. There were 7 levels of security I had to pass through, and it really does feel official.
It's very official, yes. We'll dip you in lye solution before you leave. And
Yes.
So Dan and I met in working at a meditation studio and just kind of hit it off. He was there at 8 a.m. every morning when I went. I guess you're a receptionist, but there's something about that sounds gender specific to me. Like maybe you're a receptioner. Is that more appropriate?
I think it's like a receptologist. I think it's
Yes.
referred to now.
It is a science.
But no, yeah, I just say receptionist or like I just say front desk. I was
Yeah.
just working the front desk,
Yeah.
which I had to be there super early and then have other people get there super early, being way more energetic and happy than I was to be there.
Because you're also a stand-up comic, and so I imagine
yeah.
your nights are usually late, right?
There were I mean, most of the time I tried to, like when I was working, get to bed early, but there were some wild shifts that I had to do because of that, yeah.
And how did you enjoy, I mean, what drew you to work at it was called Den Meditation. It's still in operation. It's just that it's all online right now. But what kind of drew you to go and like pick up some work there, I guess? Because it was kind of like pickup work. It wasn't like a main career, obviously.
No, yeah, definitely not. I mean, the main career for me was always like stand up and writing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was because, you have to have a day job, and I wanted mine to sort of be aligned with what I'd been doing for a while, which was meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And that it kind of just worked. Like I came in, I volunteered for a little bit, and then they were like, "Oh, do you want a job?" And it worked out perfectly. So it was just like a nice, very calming sort of gig
Cool.
to have. It was like kind of perfect when it was in operation.
Yeah. And so you've been meditating for a while. Did you have, so what's your experience? Like, what's your journey like? Did you have some kind of awakening? I've never asked you this, so it's kind of cool, even though we have had plenty of conversations, but I don't really know your story as it goes.
No, big time. So when my dad was a yoga teacher growing up, so and my mom did transcendental meditation, so it was always kind of in the household.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pick up a specific practice until I did like a study abroad trip on maybe one of the worst swings I was on, like mentally and emotionally in my whole life, which was like sophomore year of college. I had gone to college on like a semi like athlete scholarship, and I thought that would be great, and I was like so bummed out all the time. I didn't know why. And I did a travel abroad semester, which also made my athletic scholarship null and void. They were like, if you do this, like you're not going to get any money or whatever. And I was like, I don't care, whatever, I'm going to do it. And I did. And then when I was overseas is when I just took like a pretty intensive but a completely online course in mindfulness, and from there it was just like, oh, this is like great, and it was something that was very accessible. I could do every day. It filled all the criteria of stuff that I liked, and from there on it was kind of just like getting into different kinds of meditation, finding out what purposes it could have, and like it kind of just grew naturally from that.
That's really cool. And from the mindfulness and the meditating than other kinds of, I think, other kinds of metaphysical interests and study and mysticism and stuff. Because I've talked about that a little bit, talked about some cosmic intelligences stuff, and right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the channels that sort of do open naturally, and I was happy to have the basis of like the very practical sort of like basic mindfulness meditation, because it does sort of give you a foundation to get into the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do find that when you get into metaphysical stuff and the more esoteric versions of spirituality, if you don't have a basis of just like general presence, it can be a little bit difficult, and you can become a little bit ungrounded, I find. I mean, maybe not for everybody, but for me, that was definitely the road that was best to take.
Oh, I completely agree. Because mindfulness, well, I mean, in meditation, mindfulness is the portal, you go through what we call mindfulness. That is the state, that is the process of inducing really into, what we would say, into the subconscious mind or into the psychic field, depending on what your purposes are, that it is mindfulness, and it's turning off the conscious mind. So you're totally right, because you can kind of get into, and I think we observe this if you are paying attention to certain spiritual communities or conversations, maybe people commenting on YouTube videos or anything like that, where people can kind of get really out there. And it almost like it can be just another brand of dogma or something that's fear-based or something that's just like not reality-based. And I completely agree. Like, you need that grounding, or you need that mindfulness. It kind of brings in sovereignty too.
Yeah, and I think that you're more open to accept the other channels, or at least understand them, and be like, pragmatic is a weird word for it, but to just sort of parse out. And a lot of the time things do sort of work in metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things, even like very deep, like things that you could watch where if you weren't practicing spirituality, you would go, this is insane, like what is going on is crazy. And a lot of the times it is,
yes,
for sure. But having that like mindfulness practice and being present, you can sort of see, like, I understand that this is like a way to get to the top of the mountain, like the way that they're talking. It's like it's a path that maybe goes around a few bends, and you have to climb a few rocks to get there, but still it's like an interesting sort of journey. And that's kind of how I make the distinction between those two things. Where before taking a mindfulness practice, I was the same exact. I would just watch videos of people talking about, like, 12D and stuff, and I would be like, I need to get off YouTube.
Yes, so true. And you could still, like you say, it is wacky. You know what I mean? Like, as we talk about putting it in the context of this, like, I'll be teaching a class, and I'll be talking about, like, oh, you have a unicorn guide who's working with you, and we're all dead serious about it. But then I'll take a moment and I'll just be like, wow, we are weird.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have to have that.
Yeah.
If you're talking about like unicorn spirit guides, that's great. But if you don't, at least be like, is this crazy that we're doing this?
It was like one time it was like a group reading situation, and I remember this one person had some kind of concern that was it's medical, but I think it was actually gynecological, and we were doing some energy healing, and it was like, I'm totally obscuring everything, but there was something about, like, there is a Pleiadian air fairy who is helping you with this healing. And I'm just kind of like, yeah, go tell your doctor that. Go tell. It's like, we all laugh. I mean,
that's
just
science. Yeah, that one I'm totally with. And
yeah, you like that
completely. One? If you were to say that a Pleiadian air fairy was part of a woman's anatomy, I don't think that I have a base to deny that. I would have to just be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm with you. I'm a modern kind of guy. I can get behind that.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, women are mysterious. I get it.
It's 2020. Women have Pleiadian air fairies.
Yeah.
Sign of the times, baby. Get with it.
Yeah. So it's really fun. But like you said, when you said pragmatism is a weird word for it, but I don't think it is. I think that evolution comes from holding and trying to find a space of comfort with paradox. And that's probably what mindfulness is to recognize duality and then be a third party observing it.
Yeah, and be a third party user. And also, I think that you need to keep yourself open to like a lot of the times when we get too serious and
Mhm.
when we do fall into that, I call it like the like serious kind of monk level of meditation where you're just like everything is the same and I'm totally centered and I'm totally balanced. A lot of the times, if you do stay like legitimately present in those times, like jokes will happen.
Yes.
Like jokes will just come. I went on this meditation trip a little while ago to this like beautiful natural hot spring, and it was so like surreal, and I was just like, nature is incredible, and like we're all part of this and we're all together and just feeling all these weird things. And then these like goats came out of nowhere
Oh.
and just started following me and my friend, and we were just like, oh wow, nature's like fall, this is crazy, like. And then they wouldn't stop following us and it became a problem, and I was just like, oh, this is where like laughing happens. Like we had to run away from these goats that were following us and like sprint up a mountain because we could not duck these goats. And it was like that was a moment where like if you weren't in that mindset, you would be like, this sucks, like these goats are such a distraction from what we're doing. It's like, no, the goats are the thing.
Yeah.
Like the goats are the meditation. You just have to like take it all in stride.
Right. It's like the magic got a little too real.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just need some goats to show up.
You do. I absolutely do. Well, it's a kind of a joke for me to say I love goats because I love all animals. I was any animal you're bringing up, I'd be like, oh, I love crows. But yeah, no, I particularly do love goats. My husband and I always talk about getting goats. Goats are very
Yeah,
magical. And,
very.
but yeah, there is a lot of pragmatism and practicality that's what we're doing. Again, we're weaving it in, we're embodying. And so sometimes someone will, like, actually, what comes up fairly frequently is because I'm an animal communicator as well. And so this has come up before in like a forum, like on a Facebook group. They're like, hey, we just got this dog. Any intuitives or animal communicators want to ask him what his name is? I'm like, what do you mean? Dogs don't use names until we give them to them. You know what I mean? Like he didn't come
That's
in
so
going,
cool.
my name is Bailey. Like it's something that you give from your heart because humans use names because humans use verbal language and then they learn our language because whatever. But you know what I mean? Like let's get a little practical. Not everything is so mystical that it's 12D.
Yeah, I mean, also, just first of all, think about the sad alternate reality where you just like worked a front desk job and you didn't get to have questions thrown at you like, can you ask my dog what its name is? That's disappointing. I'm glad we're in this reality. But
That's
yeah,
true.
no, I think also in terms of like practicality and pragmatism, I think you can get a little bit like you have that sort of corporate meditation mindset where it's like, oh, mindfulness is great because it helps our people code for longer or whatever, and like that's a
Yes.
weird sort of practicality that I don't really like,
You
and I
don't
think that
like it?
that's
Well, I mean, maybe it's kind of like using something good for something. Yeah. But it's
using
just
something.
true.
It's completely true, and it
Mm-hmm.
will work. But I do think it's a little bit of like taking a part of like it's taking a piece of what is supposed to be a holistic practice.
Yeah.
So it's taking the objective nature where it's like, yeah, absolutely, like if you're able to focus longer, which meditation definitely allows, you're able to code longer. But the issue that I have with those sorts of things is sometimes you have these like people who build themselves as like, we're corporate mindfulness people and
Mm.
stuff, and what it really is doing is it's trying to take this like beautiful practice that's supposed to make you aware of like what meditation has made me aware of is how important friendship is, how important relationships are, how important like being present and understanding all of those things are, and to take that and just put it in a corporate setting and being like, this is how you deal with like the stress of work, and like just seeing it like that, I think is a kind of far away
It's a
from what I mean
bastardization.
by what I'm saying is when like we were talking about before,
Mm-hmm.
like I've been working with some organizations that do outreach
Yeah.
for the unhoused, and my ability to do that, and you're in high pressure situations when that happens, and my ability to be able to take those high pressure situations and sort of relax through them and not make them bigger than they are is 100% from mindfulness. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it does offer pragmatic positives, whether you want to look at it through that lens or not.
Well, and what it comes down to is intention then. So you would say that some kind of, well, I'm not, I don't want to say Google literally, but if it's some kind of Google company or some kind of tech company, let's take their brand name out of it. Some tech company is like, yeah, let's do mindfulness so that our workers can code longer. And maybe they are trying to hijack it, but it's really the intention. Still, it comes down to the intention of the individual. So truthfully, you could have been one of those coders. They introduced you to mindfulness and it still did what it would do for you, which was make you to appreciate friendship more and maybe quit the job. I don't know. Like it could backfire.
Sure. Well, it's just it's those the corporations that are like, okay, we're gonna do corporate mindfulness, and then the next day they're like, okay, we just got a contract with Lockheed Martin to make heat-seeking missiles. Like those are the kinds of things that I think are like, all right, well, this is kind of far away from what we're going for, But no, absolutely. It's like my journey into meditation was completely self-serving. Because I'm like a self-improvement freak. So like getting into mindfulness for me was completely just like, oh, I can make my brain like 10 times better than anyone else. Like competition mindset came into it, all that. But then the great thing about meditation is if you keep doing it, then that stuff will slowly start dissipating.
Yeah. It backfired on you in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. It beautifully backfired on. But yeah, no, in the same way, like you can get into mindfulness in a corporate setting and then you meditate long enough and then maybe you go, hey, maybe a 12-hour workday away from my family might not be the greatest thing in the world.
Right, because when you are in that mindful frequency, that is really connecting with unity consciousness, and you have complete free will to modulate it and do with it whatever you like, but you may accidentally expand your consciousness, and then
I hate it when that happens.
Find out that that's not ecological for you or for everyone.
It's so annoying when your consciousness expands and you're just like, I'm just trying to watch TV.
I know, right? I'm trying to Netflix this terrible reality show, dude.
Damn it.
Don't bring ecology into it. Well, let's talk some more about the awesome work that you've been doing with the Unhoused. This, would you say it's an activistic spiritual pursuit?
Yeah, for me, I mean, everything for me is connected to like spirituality.
Sure.
Like I've been doing it for so long, I've been around it for so long, it's sort of just like natural. And it's funny because I would say it's like activistic and spirituality is tied into that. And what it's really shown me is I've always had a worry, and like a lot of people who pursue any sort of spiritual endeavor have, where it's like, is this just me being self-serving? Like, is this me being selfish? Is sitting down to meditate for an hour instead of doing X, Y, or Z for another person a completely selfish pursuit? And what it's been showing me, especially since the pandemic happened and I've been out of work and I've been doing more of this work, is like, absolutely not. Like, for me personally, I'm sure it can go off into those like corners, but for me, if it weren't for all the spiritual practice that I had before getting into this work, I would have never even pursued it. Like I was in such a cloud and such a mindset, like a very small constricted mindset of, there's all this bad stuff happening and I have no recourse because I'm one person, and that like really restrictive sort of thinking occurs and you don't know how to get out of it. And like for me, meditation is the way to kind of get out of that.
Right. And as you said, it's really interesting. It's kind of like what we were tapping into with the Mindfulness Corporation. And it really does come down to the intention, comes down to the presence, because there are plenty of, individuals. There's a way that you could be engaged in activism and actually create for yourself more separation consciousness for yourself.
And I see that. Like, I've definitely seen that with certain people who... like when you get into something with any bad, it's like if you get into something with a bad intention, it doesn't matter how good that something is, because it's just a game of time, and over time those intentions will kind of reveal themselves in that sort of thing falling apart for you.
Yes. And what else is really cool is that even if you were pursuing something with, let's say, an intention that was really leading you to something that was more separation oriented, if the actual work that you did that helped others is also still in alignment. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't, it's, if you have a wrong intention, you do something good, there's still the good, you know? It's a
Hmm.
weird, again, paradox, but
Yeah.
you can't, the energy is just so pure. So where there are good deeds or good works, and where there is wisdom, even if the intention behind it, I mean, like there are certain spiritual teachers or leaders that have some wisdom that they're presenting, yet they're doing things that are nefarious, but there are still
Yeah.
people that they are influencing who actually are having some kind of personal growth, but that's because the wisdom that they're presenting, even if it is falsely from their heart, still works. It can't be tainted by the false heart that is presenting it, you know?
Well, if it didn't, like if there was nothing to it, I mean, this is sort of like this has been said many times, but if there was nothing to it, then they wouldn't have the followers. Like no
Yeah.
one would follow. It's like there's this idea that people who follow whatever you want to call them, false prophets,
Yeah.
whatever, are all just like sheep and stupid. But that's our way of dismissing that sort of thing, which is unhealthy because the more you dismiss, the more you have the possibility of falling into it, because the more you have the mindset of that's not me, I'll never be that, then when it starts happening to
Oh,
you, if you start getting into that, it's like, yeah, well, I'm not that kind of person, that's for crazy people. And then boom, you're wearing a cloak on the edge of a mountain and people are chanting at you.
which is also not in and of itself a bad thing. Goats could have
No,
chased you there.
I've been there, sister. Don't worry. Listen, we've all had those nights.
No, very true. That's such a good point that we have to almost like remain vulnerable to ourselves. Realize, oh yeah, I'm not a special person who, like, or they're not a special weirdo. Have you watched? There's two documentaries. One is Wild Wild Country about
Mhm.
Osho, formerly called
Yes.
Bhagwan. And did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Oh yeah, so that was so beautiful because it had these former followers who were so conflicted about, like, because they presented like these genuine feelings about the man who was leading them and genuine growth that they had, and then at the same time, but there was all of this stuff that was going on that was like off kilter. They just presented such conflict within themselves
Yeah.
about it, and it was just so human, really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I don't know if you've ever seen this one's one of my favorites. I always tell people to watch The Source Family
No. Source
with
family?
Father Yod.
Okay. What's that on? Is it
Oh
streaming
my
somewhere?
God. I'm sure, yeah, you'll be able to find it probably on some streaming service. That might be on YouTube also.
Uh-huh.
But it was this, I mean, but there's so much that goes on after, but in the very beginning stages, it was a cult that essentially started at a vegan restaurant.
Okay.
Like the center of the cult was this like incredible, highly touted vegan restaurant that I'm sure like so many people went to
Yeah.
and was amazing. And it's like, yeah, we want to see things in these like complete binaries of like,
Yeah.
if something is evil, everything is evil and everything they do is evil. And if
Exactly.
something is good, everything is good and everything you do is good. It's like, absolutely not.
No, that is a human, and we're all, there's no one that has transcended it entirely. So I
No.
definitely do not hold myself outside of this. It's actually, I've been I have a habit of being an all or nothing as well. Like it's like a shortcut. We want to stop doing the work. But the fact of the matter is, humans are complex, humans are messy, humans, like, nobody is 100% good or bad. So tell me more about the vegan restaurant, or, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically it was just this guy who, but he never got too much publicity because he never like had a mass killing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of but the setup that he had and like the regiment that he had his followers go through, I like when I was watching, I was listening to it was like all organic, like natural food. He had like this big workout regimen. People were so happy there. And to part of the stuff I was like, well, I mean, we shouldn't say this stuff is bad just because he was pushing it.
Yeah.
Like, but I was thinking, I was like, these crazy people. Like, you don't wake up and like eat. And I'm like, oh no, that's great. Like I would love it there.
You're like taking notes.
Yeah. Yeah, I just buy a big compound in Van Nuys and try it myself.
There's another one. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that one out. There's one also about Bikram, the yoga.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah. That, yeah, and again, like, the people loved Bikram.
Yeah.
And they still practice it. Like, a lot of the people that were interviewed are still Bikram teachers themselves.
Yeah, or they changed it to the name hot yoga instead of like being associated. Yeah. And I actually do love that style of yoga. I really love doing it in the heat. and then there's another one called Holy Hell. Have you heard of this, Doc?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Okay, you have to see it. The reason this is about a cult. By the way, I have to take a moment to say that the word cult, there is no designation for cult, because cult is really just a pejorative word that anyone could use about a collective who have a certain kind of belief structure or practice. So there's no actual proper designation. This is a cult or this isn't. You could go to the First Baptist Church on the corner and they could be a little culty, or the vegan restaurant, by the way. So, but what I think
that one's
the
fair,
word, yeah.
But yeah, I think the vegan restaurant designation is fair.
That's it. That's the standard. That's the unit of measurement.
Are they not eating animals? Okay, yeah, get out of here.
Yeah.
What a bunch of freaks.
What I think, me personally, what I would say when something goes to the place of being like a cult is when the followers, the individuals, are encouraged to negate their own personal authority or sovereignty for an outside authority or sovereignty. And that describes a lot of religions, doesn't it? By the way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and a lot of, like, I mean, bringing it back to like different like actions and activism, which I'm sure like a ton of your listeners have either gotten involved in over quarantine or are like interested in. It's like, when you don't have that base of presence and you don't have like any sort of practice, I think it's very, very hard for people to know which side of things to be on. Like making and developing your own personal autonomy and then kind of reflecting that autonomy in your action is almost impossible when you don't have that. And I think that's how people get caught up in these extremely polarized sides that are like, being put on show these days, is because you do sort of, or a lot of people can let themselves get wrapped up in things that, they, if they had taken time to really vet their belief system, it probably wouldn't have happened. It probably wouldn't have been this bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, back to the meditation and mindfulness, that presence practice is actually getting to know what it feels like to be in your own energy. And so if you don't know what your native land feels like, then you don't know when someone has crossed your boundaries, because you just don't even know where they are. And so, that's, there's interestingly, so my best friend and business partner, Crystal Ann Compton, we run these programs. We do have an education platform, and there was this person like on YouTube who made, they on YouTube, it's the wild, wild west, and people call us like, demon possessed whores and stuff like that. So this was not the worst comment. Someone saying something like referring to one of us as cult or a cult leader or something. And I was like, I said to Crystal, I was like, you know what? Starting a cult would be so much easier than trying to encourage people to meditate and have their own personal sovereignty and to go and take that inside. Starting a cult would be easy because we are all we all want to be a little lazy. We want to be told what to do. We don't want to grow up. That's really what it is.
And I mean, you did, just full disclosure, you did have me bathe in goat's blood before we started this podcast.
But that was best for you.
I think it was best for I feel like I made that decision. I mean, the tub was there, but I got into it, and that's a great analogy for what we're talking about.
Well, back to the activism, or back to the service. Let's call it service, because I think that's really, maybe there's some activism in the work that you're doing, but really it's the service. And I love the example that you're showing us, because, well, you had your kind of work shut down because of the quarantine pandemic and everything. And I imagine when it opens back up that you're going to keep the service as a part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I was working with this incredible organization called K-Town for All
Mm-hmm.
before the pandemic happened,
Mm-hmm.
and they're grassroots, like completely not affiliated with any government structure, and they provide supplies to unhoused people, but also connect them to resources, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And when the pandemic happened, it was like K-Town for All had this issue of figuring out how to deal with that, how to still do outreach, which they did like wonderfully. But in that transitional time, I was like, okay, well, I have my work is gone. Like I have nothing to do other than look for other work. And I was training people. I was doing because I was a physical therapy aide,
Mm-hmm.
so I was doing like and still am doing like FaceTime trainings like for people, but I was making my own schedule with that, and I had all this extra time, and I was like, what else can I do? Which is kind of like where a lot of people found themselves. And so when that happened, I was working with a program called Shower of Hope, which was great, and then these other two called Street Watch and Ground Game. And having those people and finding those groups that are like so in line with the ways that I thought before, but I just never took the time to find them. I was just like alone and felt very lonely because I was like, there's all this bad in the world. Who is out there helping? Like like in my brain before I found any of this, I was like, it sucks that there's no one out there helping and there's no one out there doing anything. And then when I found, I was like, oh no, there are. I just couldn't find them. Like I just wasn't looking in the right places.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, I've been doing a decent amount of work with all of those groups and learning from them in the most time because I'm like such a neophyte in relation to a lot of the people that have been with those groups for like such a long time. But yeah, just what the actions that we've been doing recently are basically just outreach and supplies, obviously trying to get masks and sanitation products to the unhoused, which is really difficult, and then trying to limit or hopefully abolish sweeps that are still happening even during the pandemic, even though it's not supposed to be happening, where they essentially take all of someone's stuff and destroy their tent and leave them with nothing.
You know, I was just driving through. I had a shudder of imagining that happening because I was just driving through the valley, and you know, the valley underpasses here in the San Fernando Valley in California, it have become more and more populated with
Mm.
unhoused people, and so you know, these underpasses have just tons of their wares. So there's tents and there are different supplies, and there must be several people who are sort of communing, having a little communal experience under that particular underpass.
Absolutely.
And I didn't see because the tents weren't actually, they didn't seem to be put up at the time. So I was just imagining those being swept away, and my heart broke there for a moment because I know that's happening.
Yeah, well, and people see that, and I don't blame these people at all because there's no education around this
Yeah.
sort of thing. Even in a place like Los Angeles where it's
Yeah.
everywhere, it's the same thing as having like abstinence only
Yeah.
education in high school, where it's like sex is happening everywhere and you're learning nothing about it. It's
Right.
like homelessness and like the unhoused people are such a high population in Los Angeles, and to have the only education be like they are bad and they should not be there, and they should be like get them away from me. I don't care where they go, but get them away from me. It is really sad. And yeah, so basically the idea for like sweeps comes from this concept of look at these people under the overpasses. There's so much trash. We
Mm-hmm.
should we should get rid of the trash and all of their stuff because
Yeah.
it's on public property. The reason why that's an issue, and this is something that comes with just kind of considering the situation, is that these are people who don't have access to trash cans. Like
Right.
they don't have the ability to throw away their garbage because there's no trash cans given to them. It's not like us who have houses and zip codes and PO boxes where we obviously have a dumpster that we could throw stuff in. They don't
Mm-hmm.
have that. So trash piles up.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of the city working with them and being like, "Oh, let's set up a couple of trash cans for the time being and then we can help you get housed." They're like, "Let's get this out of our site and then whatever happens happens."
It's just bad math. You know what I mean? Like the humans are still they're
Awful
still it's
math.
discompassionate clearly, but it's just not even logical. It doesn't there hasn't been a lot of thought done about that. And take taking a break from this episode to share with you about something that is coming up. Registration is open for the Channeling Intensive taught by myself, Tricia Carr, and Crystal Ann Compton. Now, this is a live, online, 8-week, immersive educational and experiential program. This program is designed for you to open your divine channel to higher consciousness, cosmic intelligences, and source energy. The 2020 Channeling Intensive begins the week of October 11th. This is an innovative and groundbreaking intensive designed specifically to connect you to spirit so you can draw down potent, useful, and transformative energy. If you've never been in a program like this, I encourage you to check it out. Now, this program is for intermediate to advanced students, and what we mean by that is students who are not afraid of the world of spirit and those who already know how to meditate or have a meditation practice. We will meet live and online for education and group coaching over the course of the 8 weeks. Expect your life to change drastically as new information, energy, revelations, and love pours into you, through you, and by way of spiritual channeling. I encourage you to go to the information page to read all about this 8-week course and also to find frequently asked questions. Now you can click the link in this description, or you can go to learn.lightworkerslab.com/2020 CI. If you're interested in metaphysical concepts such as frequency states, dimensions, densities, cosmic guides, and how to practically implement this knowledge into your life. And if you are seeking a community of like-hearted healers and believers in love, then check out the Channeling Intensive. Crystal and I are excited to meet you and to work with you. You know, I want to talk about, before we wrap up this episode, I want to talk about creativity and spirituality, because you are a creative in addition to all of this work that you're doing. How do you find meditation or, creativity and intuition? How do you experience that? Because I always say creativity is just intuition. It's just channeling. Artists are just channels as well. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. I mean, as much as you can take the feeling that you are the person doing it away from the process, the better. Mm-hmm. Like and I'm not saying like completely dissociate and be like Herschel Walker, where you're a different person on the field or whatever, but like literally being like, the more you can just open up. I always see like your brain is like a funneling tool. Mm-hmm. So your brain isn't really like creating anything. Your brain is funneling sensory data in and then channeling it into like ways that we can kind of, understand it. So it's like, I see a chair, I don't see everything around the chair because that would just be too much.
Yeah.
I think it's the same way with creativity, where it's like, I'm not trying to create something. I'm just trying to open up that funnel a little bit and make connections that I otherwise in like my normal everyday wouldn't create. And also for me specifically, and I'm sure like for a lot of people, just being silly. Just like not being serious. It like whenever I kind of get up my own ass about like oh I'm doing like this is what this joke and all that. That's when everything goes to shit, and that's where I find myself on stage talking for 2 minutes trying to set up a joke and being like, man, I haven't said anything funny for a really long time. But yeah, like I would say what meditation has done is twofold for me. One is it opens that channel, and it definitely like allows me to see and experience things that I would otherwise be way too lost in my own head to see and experience. Mm-hmm. And also it gives me discipline. So like I meditate every day in the same way that I write every day. And I mean the book what's it called? I think it's The Artist's Way. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I was actually going to ask you about Alexander, if that's something that you do when you say you're the physical therapy. The reason that those two things showed up for me is because Carson Doherty, who was on the program, and she's an actor, mm-hmm. It was, I don't know, last month or something. She is sort of doing some groups with The Artist's Way material.
Oh, cool.
So yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, the practices that I take from that, like one of the main ones is just writing 3 pages once I wake up, no matter what they are, even if they're like even if they're off, like just free association,
Mm-hmm.
write 3 pages. And that to me goes hand in hand with meditation always, because it's just like I have this thing that I do every day. Sometimes it feels like shit to do. Sometimes like you're sitting at the page and you're like, I may be the worst person to have ever been born. If this is the kind of stuff that I'm writing, I should have been taken out behind a shed like years and years ago. But you keep doing it, and eventually it comes to something good. In the same way, like the feeling of meditating and like having a bad sit
Yeah.
is, I realize now, because when I was younger, I didn't really realize the utility of that. I realize now, like, oh, the bad sits almost matter more. Like, sitting down and being like, I'm so frustrated. I just want to open my eyes. My nose is itchy. My back is sweaty. I have to pee. Like, but then just being like, okay, yeah, all that is definitely happening. I'm still going to sit for the, like, required amount of time. Like, I don't care. It's the same. Those two things, like, for me, are completely necessary to facilitate the other.
It's really interesting because humans are pattern recognition devices. That's what you're saying. The brain is a funnel, like it's a filter and it's creating patterns, it's recognizing patterns. The third eye is a pattern recognition device. And we work well with boundaries because you know what? We are like, that's what a story is anyway. A story is A, B, C, D, happy ending or sad ending, whatever it is, but it's a pattern. And don't we get pissed off when the movie doesn't follow some kind of pattern, even if it breaks the rules to a degree, which makes it interesting? But we do need the patterns. We do need some boundaries, and boundaries inspire creativity. So writing every day, meditating every day. I do this podcast at least once per week. I've been doing it for almost 4 years, very close to 4 years now. And that's it. Sometimes I'm like, I really suck. This is I'm ugly and fat and stupid and angry. I have a reason to not do an episode this week because I'm not in a good mood, whatever it is, but I've just given myself that. I mean, that's why sometimes challenges are a good way to create new habits.
Big time. And a lot of times there's this concept as like artists where it's like, but I'm an artist.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be like doing whatever I want and being like crazy. And it's like, no, I've been crazy my whole life. I need structure. The crazy thing is already there, babe. It's like, I don't
have to work at that.
I don't need to hit the gym for craziness at all. That is, I have that naturally. I don't need any more of it. If you need more of it, I feel really sorry for you.
Yeah. But there are some people who do need more crazy. There are some people who are
absolutely.
so, that's their challenge. Their challenge is rigidity that needs to be loosened up. They need some more flow,
Yeah, I'm jealous of those people because that is a much like more fun journey. But to me, I mean, maybe to them, like going to a fucking rave is torture or whatever. But yeah,
I mean that's torture to me because it's too much stimulation, too sensitive. But yeah, no, I get it. I'm off topic there. Right. Right. Well, as a person whose emphasis on creativity and everything, and your parents were both yogis.
Yeah.
We need to pin you down a little bit. Yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and I think that wherever your starting point is, having those daily habits of just like, this is the time I write, this is the time I meditate, this is the time I X, Y, and Z. Like the more of that you can create for yourself, the more those things do open up, and you find channels opening up that you didn't even think were going to. So yeah, for me, it's interesting. Like the path to creativity is like a very like specific sort of like daily habits sort of thing, which you don't think of when you think of creativity. You think of like, I don't know, Steve Jobs doing a handstand on a yoga ball or something like that, and then coming up with a new iPad. But no, it's like just focusing and knowing that you're creative and being confident in yourself and not letting yourself critique yourself. Like those are the very simple things I think are the most useful.
Yeah. Well, man, this has been super fun. I think we kind of we had some wisdom. We solved the world's problems, but we're also burnt out, right?
Yeah, I'm very burnt out now. Yeah.
I got to go meditate.
This is my work for the week.
No, this has been really super fun. We'll have to do it again. And anything else, some last ways we'll have information about you in the description. Anything else you want to include as we wrap up this episode?
That's about it.
That's it.
I think that I did all the plugging that one could possibly handle from listening to an episode.
You only plugged beneficence. You didn't plug any. Do you have any comedy or anything? You're like, no, it's a quarantine. No, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you could, on Instagram, it's at notbaddan, NOTBADDAN.
Okay, cool.
And that's
We'll
it.
include your links there.
Oh, awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dan Donohue.
Thank
really
you.
so much fun.
Bye.
I'm so inspired by the work that Dan is doing and the way that he's able to hold his home frequency, hold his presence while working in these places and with these folks who are really in really challenged time, really challenged situations. I know a lot of us, our sensitivity sometimes gets the best of us, and it makes us feel overwhelmed and like we can't do it. And I think that Dan is such a great example of moving forward and finding a way to be of service in very effective ways. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much. I invite you to like, subscribe, share, comment, and leave a review of the podcast. If you're one who listens to it, you can leave it on Apple iTunes. Just scroll down in your app and you'll find a way to leave that review. And thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.